four-time Emmy-nominated producer, Frank Pace, with retired New York City firefighter and Vietnam vet, Billy O'Connor.
This week's guest, producer on CBS Sunday Morning, Jay Kernis.
Which one's Billy and which one's Frank?
Which one's the Mick? Which one's the Mook?
Which one's the Mick and which one's the Mook?
Hey, Frankie boy, how are you?
Good, Billy. How are you?
You guys were as welcome as a bowl of tits. Great to see you.
That's Derek. That's Derek Harris down at the bottom.
Derek, my brother, how you doing down there?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you?
Not bad, brother.
You guys looking vibrant. Looks like you got your facials done this morning.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we actually started on time today.
All right.
Tell you what, never mind the facials and how I look between the COVID and my age. My back is going out more than I am nowadays. I've been fine to home.
But I've had 2 shots now.
I'm getting mine Friday. My second shot Friday. So keep me posted.
So we may be back in the studio before too long.
Yeah, well, they say the deal is supposedly after you get the second shot, give it 2 weeks. Is that right?
That's about right. I'm going to try to stop yelling today. I just noticed that I was yelling today. I can't stop you.
That's a good psychological trick.
I
can't stop you. Hey, before we forget, our guest today is Jay Kernis, CBS Morning News producer. So he'll be a great guy. He was a founding producer of NPR.
Yeah, he worked for 19 years with NPR. We'll talk to him when he comes on.
Okay, so now I can talk. I can talk to you.
What were we talking about? Senior moment, Frank. Oh, loud.
Yeah.
When I was drinking, of course, when you're in a bar and the jukebox is on, there's a mob of people. You want to make yourself heard. You're always above and beyond everybody else. You're always screaming. Because You think, when you're drinking especially, you think what you have to say is important. You solve all the problems in the world when you're drunk. Geez, I can't believe I figured that out. That's what we got to do, Like you get these great ideas at 5 o'clock in the morning, drunk. But when I used to come home, I'd be hoarse for like 2 days. And my wife, it used to drive my wife, my Italian wife. What she used to do is she knew I'd be hungover, man. And when I was hungover, it was like after a 3-day load, I'd be trying to sleep. And she'd come in with the vacuum. And she'd run the vacuum all around the bed. And she'd run it for like an hour and a half. And of course, I can't say, stop vacuuming. What are you doing? Cleaning the house? I'd have to sit there like trying to cover my face. But she'd just come in and start vacuuming for like an hour and a half just to break my balls.
Hey, so you're a history buff, right?
Love history.
Okay. Do you know what happened this week what happened this week in history?
I don't even know what date it is.
This week in history, Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone.
Watson, come here. I need you.
That's exactly what he said. Do you know how old he was when he said it? When he invented the telephone, how old was Alexander Graham Bell?
That's a good question. I don't know if I know that. I know his first line was, Watson, come here. I need you, because he spilled acid on his leg or something.
Acid, yeah, something like that.
I don't know, 35?
Yeah, it was 29.
I almost said 29, but that would have been a complete shot in the dark. So I'll go with 35.
I mean,
I love history, man. I really do.
45. I would have thought he was 45 or 50.
Hey, you live near the Rose Bowl. You know what I read the other day? This is really a pretty cool thing about history. When they were building the Erie Canal, from New York, which opened up the whole Midwest, and actually robbed New Orleans of being the whole center of European immigration and everything else, because when they opened up the Erie Canal, of course, all the commerce went north to open up the Great Lakes. But anyway, when they were blasting through the granite, the Erie Canal, they took out enough granite to fill up the Rose Bowl in Pasadena 65,000 times.
65,000 times?
Yep. 65,000 times. Is that some context to show you what kind of a project it was?
You know what's some kind of context? we're going to have to do a chapter or a segment of the show. What the hell goes on in your mind?
Good luck with that. Three psychiatrists surrender. They just said, fuck it. You're just crazy.
How the hell would everybody know that they took 65,000 loads of granite out of the Erie Canal that could fill
But it shows you the concept of things. It blows me away. Like DeWitt Clinton couldn't get anybody interested in the Erie Canal. He couldn't even get private investors. And it really was the whole thing that made New York what it was.
Hey, I want to just try a run of conscious thing. Okay, so let's do a segue. So now let's do some segues. You just said the Rose Bowl, so I'm going to tell you that the Rose Bowl announced this week that they're going to be in effect next year, 2022.
So they're going to have the game.
Yeah, they're going to have the.
Well, I would hope by 2022 we're open for business, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, Newsom announced that they're going to allow fans in baseball games in California. Of course, there's only one team out of 5 in California, one team out of 4 that's qualified for having baseball. One team out of 5. Only the San Francisco County has fulfilled all 3 of the criteria. Get the other counties have got to fulfill one of the 3 other criteria.
Oh, so.
But they're hoping that they can have fans.
I thought I read the other day that the Dodgers are going to have fans.
Yeah, but they're going to have fans as soon as they fulfill the 3 criteria. Only one county in the state has fulfilled the 3 criteria, and that's San Francisco. Even Oakland hasn't. San Francisco has. So Orange County, LA County, and San Diego County still can't have fans as of today. They may be able to, and they're striving to have fans by April 1st.
Well, I mean, it'd be great to see, business as usual. I mean, I think we're a long way away from that. I think they're being premature opening up these mask mandates. As a matter of fact, after I get my shot, I'm still treating this stuff like it's the plague.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm 72 years old. I like life,
I saw on Twitter yesterday or whenever it was, a couple of days ago, some people in Iowa were having mask burning parties. What are they crazy?
I mean, we just put an aircraft on Mars. You know what I mean? We just put a drone on Mars. That's what happens when you listen to science. I mean, all these Facebook scientists, they drive me out of my mind. It's crazy. I mean, my ex-wife is a Bible freak, God bless her. You want to believe in the Bible? Knock yourself out. But she likes to argue politics. And I say to her all the time, look, who wrote the Bible? And she gives me the Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Okay, fine. I says, what's the first sentence in Genesis, In the beginning? He says, cool. How many commandments? 10. How many deadly sins? 7. I say to her, who wrote the Constitution? How many freedoms in the First Amendment? How many amendments in the Constitution? I said, why would I want to talk to you about politics? I might as well talk to somebody in Indonesia about the Yankees' chances next year. You don't know anything about it. I mean, it's like, if you were going to have an operation, would you go to a hardware store to get an opinion? Well, everybody's an expert.
If the doctor was in the hardware store, I would.
Reminds me of an old joke. A guy goes into a store and he says,
"See, now I'm yelling again."
I'm yelling.
Well, yeah.
Yell. It's all right. Yell.
Nicely, Billy.
Guy walks into a store and he says, "Hey, let me get a nice kielbasa." And the guy behind the counter says, "Kielbasa? Oh, you must be Polish." He says, why? He said, because I like kielbasa. He says, a lot of people like kielbasa. He goes, no, because this is a hardware store.
Oh my God.
That's hilarious.
Hey, so I'm going to go on a little rant.
Okay.
So Les Miles, the former football coach at LSU, was just found responsible for a sexual molestation or a sexual predator thing at LSU in 2013. He got another job at Kansas after he was fired. Sean Miller, the head basketball coach at Arizona, is going to get put on probation for grievous errors in behavior at Arizona. What the fuck is wrong with these people? They don't realize that they're in revenue producing sports. The only thing that separates them from the other non-revenue sports is the multi-million dollars that go into sports. I mean, if they were in non-revenue producing sports, they would be fucking gym teachers, because that's who was coaches before. And quite honestly, soccer coaches, volleyball coaches, softball coaches, those are all considered non-revenue producing sports. They get paid a nice salary between $80,000 and $125,000.
Really?
That's a nice salary, but it's not the millions that Les Miles is getting, that Sean Miller's getting at Arizona. These guys are getting millions and millions of dollars, and they can't either keep it in their pants, or they can't abide by common rules of deportment. Derek, what do you think about that? I mean, you've been involved in college recruiting, and you've been involved in sports, all your life. Billy has too, but we don't count gambling as a participant in this sports business.
What I think about the fact that they allow these people to keep their jobs.
Well, they allow. Yeah, I mean, it's the constant search for money. Money in sport. Money is killing sports.
Let me ask you, in LSU, was it boys or girls or boys or women or what?
It was girls.
It was girls.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like Cuomo. It's the same kind of thing as Cuomo does. He's using his position to gain access to young women.
Men have been doing that for a long time. I'm not justifying it, but men have, I mean, the casting couch in Hollywood is a famous cliche.
I know, but now
Weinberg.
Why are you bringing Hollywood into it?
Well, because Frank works in Hollywood, so I figured it's relevant.
Yeah.
And that gets me off on another thing. This transgender athletes competing against.
Yeah, that's
women.
Ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. They ought to have a category for men against men, women against women, and they ought to fund a transgender category in college sports.
So, let me just. I agree with you 100%. I don't think transgender. I don't think that's fair. It's bullshit. But this whole sexual thing that's going on, I mean, men are screwed up. I mean, we are screwed up. I was walking on a nude beach in a nudist colony.
Men are screwed up.
That's a funny.
I'm a man. In case you haven't noticed, I'm not transgender. But I'm walking on a nude beach in St. Bart's. And I'm walking along, and I mean, you don't get aroused because, it's just
Hold on.
everybody's naked,
Can I just pause you for a second?
Sure.
So were you nude on this beach?
Yes, because it was a nudist colony.
Nude, completely nude?
Yeah.
Were you in shape?
You any other kind of nude?
I just want to make sure. I just want a full clarification.
Let me tell you how screwed up my mind is, and I think all men are like this. I'm walking along, and there's good-looking women, there's older women, there's fat women, there's skinny women, there's short women, tall women, and men naked,
Uh-oh.
And this woman walks past me with a bikini bottom, and after she walks past me, I turn around and stare at her ass, and I said to myself, "We're nuts." There's nude people all over the place. She's got a bikini bottom on. I turn around and look at it. But I don't get this dick pic thing. That I don't get at all. What makes a man think, oh, you know what? This is going to turn a woman on. Let me take a picture of little Bill. Look at Brett Favre. I mean,
the Mets manager 2 years ago was Mick Callaway. All right. His nickname amongst Major League Baseball people was Dick Pick Mick.
Wow.
Because he was sending these dick pics to everybody, and theoretically, no one knew about it. They didn't find out about it until recently when Dick Pick Mick was outed by somebody who was declaring that he was a pervert, and now he's on suspension. He's on suspension from the Angels coach. Dick Pick Mick.
But no one knew about it. But it's always great to have pervert in parentheses after your name. Billy O'Connor, pervert. Well, look at Brett Favre. I mean, here's a guy on top of the world. He's sending out dick pics. I mean, what makes a guy think, you know what, this is what women are good. Like if I was sent out a dick pic, nowadays they got this thing called manscaping, right? All the men, they trim themselves up, right? My bush looks like somebody threw a hand grenade into a haystack. I'm not going to send out a dick pic. It's like, what's the hope? I don't get it. I mean, it used to be, the worst thing used to be with men at a construction site, when a woman would walk by, they all give it the baby, like a woman's going to say, well, that's really attractive. Let me stop here and see if I get to know that guy, you know. Baby, hey, over here.
Let me put my dress up and see if anything happens.
When I was driving a truck in Manhattan with the Teamsters, they beeped their horn when they see a good-looking girl. Clearly, we've run out of ideas. Like, beep, beep, I'm over here.
Oh, my Lord.
I mean, we're a mess. Men are a mess. It doesn't surprise me at all. So you think these guys should lose their job, of course, unless they're priests. That is almost a prerequisite.
I was going to bring that up. I just think that the technology has caught up with the behavior.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I think the behavior has been worse. I actually think the behavior is better. I think it's been worse in the past, but I think that they can't get away with it anymore because the speed of information is just too fast to cover up now.
Well, guys like Dick Pick Mick are ridiculous.
And I'm not Mick. I'm not Dick Pick Mick. Don't confuse the issue.
Billy, I would, if we could put you now as a young man in this modern time,
I'd be doomed.
Almost sure that you would have sent a couple of dick pics.
No, but I don't know about a dick pic, but I would be doomed. There's no way. I mean, listen, I was as guilty as anybody when I owned bars. You know, I was in a position.
Wait, don't incriminate yourself. That's
Yeah,
fine.
you know
That's
what?
all we need to know.
Statute of limitations is up.
Except for murder. I didn't kill anybody. But I mean, I made a few girls pass an oral exam before I hired them. I mean, I was guilty. You know what I mean? Like, men in the 50s and 60s and 70s used that a lot more blatantly than they are now. Now they're getting held accountable. And I got 2 daughters. So I'm delighted they're being held accountable.
Yes.
No, and I should have been held accountable. But I was drinking. I was drinking. I never killed an American. I was on the Eastern Front. Sure, I was in World War II. But I'm innocent. I was only following on.
Oh, my gracious. Well, let's get our guest on. What do you think, Derek? Our guest today is one of the founding producers of NPR Public Radio Morning Edition, which recently celebrated its 40th anniversary. He's now one of the producers of CBS Sunday Morning. Have you seen that show, Billy? CBS Sunday Morning?
You told me it's the best news show on television. The problem is Sunday morning's a tough morning for me. I should watch it on tape.
Yeah, you should watch it on tape. But it's a great show. So welcome, Jay Kernis.
I told you all the that makes a great T-shirt.
Jay's coming in.
Cool.
Hey, Jay, how are you, my friend?
Very well. Great to see you. How you doing?
My partner, Billy O'Connor, and my other partner, Derek Harris.
Real honor to meet you,
hello.
pal. Really, really honest to meet you, Jay.
Well,
really,
thank you.
Really, really honored.
You've got that scruffy look, huh?
Yeah. I never had a beard, and then over last March or April, I started growing it, and then this summer it got like too hot under the masks, and then so I shaved it off. Then it grew back, and my wife keeps looking at me and saying, we're married like more than 30 years, sometimes she looks at me and she says, "Can I get my husband back?"
She likes the guy without the beard.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what? I can understand having a beard. I can understand not having a beard. What I could never understand is this new look, the Arafat look, where they're not quite sure whether it should be a beard or not.
Well,
hey, most of your life, what time have you been getting up for the majority of your life? You've been doing morning shows for about 5 years or so?
Yeah, usually 4:30 in the morning, 4:30 or 5. And since March 11th, I get up around 7:30. It's a whole different feeling.
So why don't you bring the audience through a non-COVID typical day for you on CBS Morning News?
CBS Sunday Morning.
Yeah, CBS Sunday Morning. Talk about how you pitch a show, how you put it together. Why don't you just go through all the basic steps of a segment producer's job?
All right, so we have 20 producers on the show.
Wow.
And I'm very lucky, believe me, very lucky to be in that group. And people often ask, well, do you pitch your own ideas? Yeah, every now and then. But the fact is, I've been on the show more than 8 seasons. They know the kind of pieces I like to do. I like to do pieces involving people, profiles, trends, why people behave the way they do. And while this disappoints people, often I am called by my executive producer, one of the senior producers, or by a correspondent who says, "Hey, here's your next piece." And the fact is, they know the kind of pieces I want to do. And so they come to me and say, "Oh, we think this is your kind of piece." And like more often than not, it is. And I've been doing this more than 50 years. And you discover that in most of the pieces I'm assigned, the things that I want to express with my correspondent, there's always a place to express that in the piece. So I get an idea, or an idea is given to me, and we start research. And what that means is the piece I'm working on for next week's show involves a book. Wow. This book was sent to me. It's more than 400 pages. And I don't know a lot of stuff. I really don't. There's people at CBS who really know history and politics and business. I don't.
You're like, and unlike Billy knows a lot of.
I know he knows a lot of stuff.
But I don't know. I got a scrambled brain, but I can't believe that you don't, because you've been a journalist this long. You've been interviewing all kinds of different people from all different fields, and I ain't buying it that you don't know a lot.
I know a little, but I'm well prepared. And so that 400-page book, I outlined it.
Wow.
I outlined it so I could learn what was in it. And then I went to different websites and I spoke to people and I said, is this true? Is this happening? At the same time, we had to figure out who's going to be in a piece. Who are the best people to tell the story? You make calls, you look at experts, you talk to people and say, who's great at this? Who really gets what a story is about? And you book them, which is to say, you ask them, will you be interviewed? Now, before COVID, you would bring a camera crew. I was on a plane 4 or 5 times a month. Since COVID, we've been taping in the park, in backyards, in big rooms. To go on location, you have to have a COVID test. You have to quarantine. You have to have a test. I'm waiting for test results right now because I was just in Washington, D.C. On a shoot for next week. And I can't leave this apartment. I got a message 2 nights ago from the sheriff of New York City. Billy, you must have known New York has a sheriff. I didn't realize we had a sheriff.
And I had no idea.
This sheriff says to me, you are now quarantined. Unless you have a COVID test and you're negative, you cannot leave your apartment. We will phone you or knock on your door. If you are not there, you have 3 hours to answer us. If you don't answer us in those 3 hours, you will receive a huge fine. It's like, oh my God. I mean, it's enough to do a television piece. When you add COVID onto it, it's a lot of stuff, and it's just keeping us safe, and it's keeping our guests safe.
But as a journalist, you don't have any closer access to the vaccine than anybody else, right? They don't consider it a critical occupation.
We were last March. I have the advantage of being old as dirt.
Yeah, I guess I'm
Welcome to the crew.
I'm trying not to yell. I'm just trying to talk politely. I'm guessing you're the youngest of us three.
Thank you, but I will be in June 69.
Yeah, so
Yeah, you're the youngest.
Right.
So I'm very fortunate to have the job, and a week ago I got my second vaccine.
Yeah.
So,
you got it. Good.
Yeah, I got it. So that was fine. So anyway, so you do all this research, you find the guests, and then you have to book a camera crew. You have to, like most network news, the more successful you are, the less money you can spend. So can you shoot the piece in a day? Can you shoot the piece in 2 days? What do you need to tape? Then I work with my correspondent on what's called focusing. Like we're very lucky. We have 6 or 7 minutes of television time. It's a long time in television to tell a story. Now, when I was at 60 Minutes, you had 13 minutes, but 7 minutes is long. But, that whole book, which is about politics, you can't tell that story. So how much of the story are you going to tell? And it's better to know that in the beginning, because otherwise you're doing hours and hours and hours of interviews, and you have to go through all those interviews, and you have to figure out like what an audience will sit through. What does an audience want to know? So go ahead.
You're selecting that out of the 400 pages. So you're the outlining. You're the guy who's taking out what you think is important. From all your years of editing at NPR, that's got to be really handy for you to do.
Yes, absolutely. No, I do have a lot of experience with that, and I have a lot of experience, and I've been very fortunate to work with very talented people. So my correspondent is reading the same book, but I work with maybe 5 or 10 different correspondents. I know their work. They know my work. They know that I'm going to outline a book. They know I'm going to try to focus the piece. And then usually I have not a very long conversation with them. And I say, here's what I think the piece is about. Or the correspondent will call me and say, what do you think the piece is about? They want to hear like 3 things. They don't want to hear 20 things. They want to hear 3 things. It's about this, this, and this. They go, yes. And what about this? And I take notes. Yes. I mean, it's a very collaborative process. So we go into a set of interviews basically knowing what we want, but we also want to be surprised. Now, so a piece will go through many different versions. The first version of the piece is the research. The second is when you conceive of the interviews. And I work on questions with the correspondents. Then you actually go and tape and listen to these interviews. So a third version of the piece gets in your head. Then you look at all the tape. You look at all the tape you can look at, including archival tape. Now,
do you have the tapes transcribed also?
The interview tapes are transcribed, yes, which is very important to have that. And I mean, many people look at tapes differently. I look at the tape, I have the transcript in front of me, and if I like something a little, I make a little mark. If I like it more, I underline it. If I like it more than that, I put an asterisk. If I really love it, I box it, right? So then when you go back and lift those best moments out, invariably, 95% of the best moments that make the piece will be those moments that you boxed and put underlines. And I mean, you can go back if your correspondent says, hey, you know what, we're missing this beat. You go back and you see, all right, yeah, that's good. So when you create the first version of the script, that's probably the fourth that's the fourth time you have a conception of the story.
Okay, and Jay, let me ask you: do you create the script, or does the correspondent create the script, or you work on it together? Is it a collaboration?
Depends who you work with. Some correspondents you just send the best bites to. We have one correspondent, Martha Teichner, been at CBS, I don't know, more than 40 years. With Martha, once you're finished with the interviews, she chooses the bites, she writes the first draft of the script. But you must look at all that tape yourself, because Martha's going to say to you, is that the best stuff? Now, she always chooses the best stuff, but sometimes you can say to her, Martha, you've done this, you've gotten us from A to B, but there's this little moment where you're just really wonderful. Consider putting that in. The first time I worked with her, I knew she was choosing all her tape, and I didn't really look at the tape carefully. Mistake. You need to know the tape as well as she knows the tape. Other correspondents, you'll write a first draft of the script. They will write the second draft. You might write the third draft together. All right. So you have a script, and then you need archival tape. You need the photographs. Some of our pieces have 50 or 60 photographs, and we work with wonderful broadcast associates who really know how to go into archives. They know how to go into photo houses like Getty and pull the exact photos you need. All of that is delivered to an editor. Now, we used to be in an office. We're doing this show. I do my pieces from the dining room table. There are editors working in their bedrooms, in their dining rooms, in their basements. It's not as if I can go in.
Same as out here. Same as out here.
Yeah. So I can't go in and look. If I want to look at what they're doing, they have to send me a link, and then I have to look at it. But it's not as if I can walk from my office around the corner, take a look at something they've done, and quickly say, hey, you know what, let's go for a better shot. Or they may say, I have a better shot. So that takes a little more time. All right, so once an editor has edited your script, that's the fifth or sixth version of the piece.
I got to ask you, does that piss you off?
No,
print journalism, sometimes an editor can piss off a writer, like Molly Ivins, I remember famously said. She said one time about was squealing like a $2 fiddle, and the New York Times said for an inexpensive instrument instead of $2 fiddle.
Now, remember, these are some of the best tape editors in the world.
Right.
So they become your co-producer. When you see, you saw my name there, but after my name on a piece is the editor's name. So it's not only the correspondence piece, it's my piece and the editor's piece. An editor at any moment can say, I don't like that moment in the script. It doesn't work. Your words do not really tell the story that's happening on the screen. They can question your story structure. They can say to you, you know where you're beginning the piece? It really begins on page 2. Or they can say, you have chosen this question and answer area. I have a better one. But the fact is, we work so closely with those people that you end up sort of being on the same page at the same time.
Jay, let me ask you a question. Who has the final say? Who has the final say? Is it the on-air talent? Is it the producer? Well, I know it's not the editor.
It's our executive producer.
The executive producer.
Our executive producer will look at the piece and question every shot, every word, the structure, anything he wants. And his name is Rand Morrison, and he's been on the show many, many years. And he's the one who really took the show from 3 million viewers a week to 6 million viewers. This is a morning show that gets very little promotion. We have, on a good day, 6 million viewers, and it's all him. I mean, you can get a call Saturday night. He's looked at the script again, or he's looked at the piece again, and he'll say, would you change this one word? Like, yeah, sure, yeah. So you find your correspondent, you say, retract this line, here's the word Rand wants changed, and you want to know something? It's better. He doesn't do it to put his fingerprints on the piece. He makes every piece better.
You know how I found the show? I found the show because my good friend, the late Howard Morris, of your show of shows, Andy Griffith, he was basically my mentor in the business. And he said, you want to see this fucking show? I'm telling you, watch it. This fucking show is the best fucking show on television. It's the best, I tell you. So I started watching it, and you know what? It was the fucking best.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's why I feel blessed to be on it. I've had a wonderful career. I've been on great shows. I've had wonderful jobs. This is the best job I've ever had.
That's saying something.
It really is the best
some
job.
real heavyweights.
Yeah.
I mean, you work with some real heavyweights.
Let's continue. So the executive producer gives you his notes, and then when does he?
Well, then you have to cut 20 seconds.
Right, of course.
Because everything is too long.
Yeah, everything.
Now here's, if you know the show, when the show was done live, or the end of the show was done live, we had the moment of nature, which in the control room, you could accordion. Like if a couple of pieces ran over, you could have less or more shots of wolves running through a park,
right.
Flowers growing. Now, we're all sitting, in our dining rooms and bedrooms, and the show is actually being put together by an editor. And if 4 of us are 2 seconds over, that means the show is 8 seconds over. Early Sunday morning, 2 in the morning. Where's the editor going to get that time? Well, because of the nature of the show, he's very reluctant to just go into somebody's piece and cut it. So they'll wake you up and say, cut 2 seconds. But mostly on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we get emails. Is your piece 6.5 minutes? Yes, it's 6.5 minutes. Is it really 6.5 minutes? Yes, it's really 6.5 minutes. Is every piece ends with a sun? Is it 6.5 minutes with the sun? Yes, it's 6.5 minutes with the sun. I mean, by the end of the week, they're crazy about exact times because we have to deliver a show of exactly the right length. And if a few of us go over a second, that messes somebody else up.
So they can't. You're saying now that they can't steal it out of the ending, out of these nature piece?
They can get a couple of seconds, but not really, because for those of you who ever see the show, that moment of nature is very important, and it used to be 45 seconds. Now it's 25 seconds or 30 seconds. There are viewers, God bless them, that sit there with a stopwatch.
Wow.
And if the moment of nature is less than 30 seconds, they start posting on social media. It was only 28 seconds today. Oh, you have to love those people. They love the show, but you don't mess with the moment of nature.
Wow.
They really hold you to a high standard. So tell me, your executive producer, Morrison, does he come to you with the projects that you may or may not be interested in, but you're going to have to do anyway? Is he the one that signs the projects?
Yes, or one of the 3 or 4 senior producers does, but he makes every decision on the show. Every decision. Does the piece get green lighted? What producer works with what correspondent? How long will the piece be? When will the piece air? Ultimately, he makes every decision, and I'm very lucky. I've got a great boss, and I trust him. And if you pitch something, this is before COVID, but if you pitch something and he goes, "No, I don't like it," you can go back a week later and say, "I have a different idea for it." They'll go, "Okay, tell me," and he'll reconsider it. He's very collaborative with us.
After he signs off, when does it get recorded, and how does that recording process work?
I got a request.
Yes,
Sorry.
Yeah.
Jay, your mic is stuck under your collar, and it's.
It is?
Yeah, there you go. Better.
Sorry.
No problem.
I forgot that was the mic. Darn. Well, the show gets put together now. The show used to get put together in a studio early Sunday morning with Jane Pauley, our host, our anchor.
The segment pieces. When does the segment get recorded, or it's already put together. There's no voiceover. There's no recording on the piece.
No, the individual pieces are done usually by Friday or Saturday,
Okay.
and Jane pre-records her sections usually on Thursday or Friday, and then it's like a miracle. It's all Derek. Can you hear? Does I sound okay now? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, you sound great now.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
Sorry about that. So the show gets put together Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, but a couple of weeks ago, I got it. Well, I didn't. I mean, I looked at the headlines when I got up, and I saw that Larry King had died, and I thought, oh, I'm going to get a call. 7 minutes later, I got a call. Now this is Saturday morning. The show's on Sunday. We want you and Lee Cowan to do an obit, and we worked from 8 o'clock Saturday morning Eastern time till about 2 in the morning, and put a 7-minute obit together. So some days you do all that whole process in a day.
I want to say, you worked with Lee Cowan a lot, and Lee Cowan worked with you when I met you on Murphy Brown.
Correct.
I think Lee Cowan has got the best bedside manner of any interviewer that I have ever worked with or seen. He's just so natural.
He's wonderful. He's really wonderful.
He's the opposite of Billy O'Connor. He is so relaxed. He is so relaxed.
What do you think? You would get Charlie Rose here or what?
Yeah, Lee is.
As goes that would say.
Let me tell you something about Lee. Not only he happens to write his own pieces, and he writes beautifully, but when you are in the field doing a taping with Lee, after the taping, he starts rolling up the cable. He starts helping the crew pack up. That is rare in this business.
Yeah, I think we've got a picture of Lee. That's number 5. Can you picture of Lee Cowan with Nick Nolte? If you could put that up there, that'll show the audience who are not aware of who Lee is.
Yeah, there's Lee Cowan.
There he is.
Boy, that was a crazy day.
With Nick, I can't imagine.
Nick, I'll tell you something about Nick. He has a way of answering questions which I could only call as stream of consciousness. Like, you ask a question, and whatever comes to his head, he starts talking about. He may reference his early career. He may reference life on another planet. And Lee had done so much research, and Lee had done such a great job of understanding what Nick was about, that wherever Nick went, Lee kept up, knew what the follow-up question is. But I could see Lee take his questions and just put them away after a couple of minutes, because it was clear Nick was going to go wherever Nick wanted. And, that might have thrown a correspondent, because there were a couple of times where I'm looking across the room. I try to sit so I'm always within line of sight of my correspondent. I don't want to be in line of sight of the person we're interviewing. I don't want them to look at my face and think, oh, he doesn't like this, or, because, you don't know what's on your face during an interview. Could be indigestion. You don't want them to think.
I would think that's an easy interview when somebody's like that. I mean, I've seen interviews with Joaquin Phoenix and Paul Newman. One of the worst interviews ever. He's yes, no, yes, of course, and he goes, yes, no.
Well, let me tell you something. There's 2 kinds of pieces, and this has to do with, this is public radio highfalutin stuff, but there are certain interviews where you have a beautiful piece of marble, and all you do is chip away and free the sculpture that's in there. That's because the person speaking has given you so much. There's other kind of interviews where they're not giving you anything. and it's like a piece of clay, a piece of clay, a piece of clay, and you're scraping the barrel to find little moments so you can put something together. Now, Mick, in that case, was giving us an awful lot, but some of it was almost impossible to follow unless you knew what he was talking about. So, so in the editing room, it was partially clearing away and partially building up, and us being, of course, we wanted to be very respectful to him and his career. But Lee was thoroughly unfazed. Lee made it happen. So God bless him.
Great. Who are some of the other people that you've interviewed that made a mark on you?
Oh, well, just going back to Lee, a month or two ago, he was at Lady Gaga's house. I was producing from this table, so I was just watching it on FaceTime. But her depression and her inability to deal with her success. I mean, I wept a couple of times sitting here watching it, and like, she knows us, we know her, but her honesty was just stunning. And she really wanted people to know that even though she's Lady Gaga, life is not, it's not always the best it could be. And people who need help should seek help. So that was quite amazing. But I've been, when I think of the people I met, I mean, at 60 Minutes, Mike Wallace and I did a piece on Mel Brooks. Now, you have to understand, we went to Don Hewitt, the creator of 60 Minutes, and said, we want to do a piece on Mel Brooks. Well, at that point, Mel was not, I mean, we loved him, but he wasn't the enormous success. The last thing he had done was Spaceballs. He was going to do a new play, a new musical called The Producers. No one knew anything about it. And I had to go and take a Mel Brooks final exam. I had to sit with Mel and two publicists, and he asked me questions. By the way, I was allowed to bring notes. I had done my research. So he said, what do you want this piece to be about? And I said, well, it can be, this is for 60 Minutes, by the way. I said, oh, one thing. The pressure is on because Don Hewitt had said, if this piece doesn't work, I'm not airing it. I'm like, okay, fine, great. That's the kind of pressure a producer needs. So I'm sitting with Mel in a press office in New York, and he's charming, but he's firm. He's a director. He's like, what is this piece about? I said, well, it can be about your life. I don't want to talk about my life. All right, then it can be about this new show you're doing, The Producers. But we need access to it. Rehearsals. I don't want to give you access. Like, Mr. Brooks, we have to come to some. So he starts asking me questions. And he goes, tell me about like my career in the Catskills, where he was a tumbler, where he, right? So I answer the question, like you were with the guests at the pool and you were doing shtick, and he wants to know that I know his life. And we go, to your show of shows, and like he's testing me. But I'm allowed to look at my notes. If I need a date, I can actually open up my notebook and I can look. He says, what happens next? I said, well, next you meet, you meet Marianne Bancroft. Anne's off the table. It's like, fine, but you asked me what happened next. Next you meet Anne. He goes, oh, yeah. So now, at that point, Anne may have been ill. No one knew it for probably 2 years. She may have been ill. We don't know, but it was like off the table. So I actually get through the interview, and I am told a couple of days later, you got it. He's going to do one TV interview, 60 Minutes, Mike Wallace. So I said, I want to go to the first day of the rehearsal, because I've done a lot of pieces on Broadway shows, and the first day of the rehearsal is like first day of school. So I bring Mike Wallace there, and this whole cast, Nathan Lane and Broderick, and like everyone realizes, oh my God, Mike Wallace is here. It was like Mike had blessed them. And Mel is showing the set and he's introducing everybody, and it's wonderful. You know, we're just taping him. Mike doesn't ask any questions. He's just there. And then we go to other rehearsals. And then Mike and I go to Chicago where the show opens. And we're like in the third row. And after about 10 minutes, I'm sitting there with Mike Wallace and we are hugging each other because we know that this show's a hit. You know, Mike was on the Broadway stage. He and I have separately done a lot of theater stuff. We know this show is a huge hit. And we interview Susan Stroman, the director, at some point. We interview Nathan Lane and Matthew. And
Dick Shawn was in that too, right?
only in the movie.
It is in a movie.
Oh, I see.
He was in the movie. He wasn't in the show. I gotta think. I'll think. I know his name. It's just not coming to me. Well, 3 weeks before we have to go into edit, we still don't have the Mel Brooks interview, right? And at that point, the theater is being loaded in, so I can't use the Schubert or whatever it is. So I had to call the theater company, his press company. I said, you need to open up a theater for us so we can interview Mel. And I knew that Mel loved a certain kind of very expensive pistachio nuts. And he actually was, I think, a little nervous that the show would not be a hit. So he was really trying to get out of it. And I told his people, he has to be there. And he was there, and he was great. And it became a 60 Minutes classic.
Jay, let me ask you a question. For you, I know for me, key to my success or whatever success I've had is because I was really good at talent relations. But I had several weeks and several months to get close to the talent. How did you get close to the talent so quickly?
I think it's because I don't know. I've been
because I've been described as an acquired taste. So I will need a little bit more time to win you over, but you have to win them over fairly quickly.
I had very good mentors, and my mentors told me that to succeed you need to deal with talent. So one, you need to understand what they do best. And so when I'm assigned somebody to work with, I study their best pieces. I look at what they do. And one of my mentors told me that when you work with talent, they're doing something very, very difficult. Now, I've not been on television, but I was on radio. I know what it feels like to be in front of an audience. And here's the metaphor that I've used, especially with students. I've said, that talent has to get up and walk across that tightrope. They're the ones up there with everybody watching them walking that tightrope. They're looking down at you and they want to see, where's the net? Are you holding the net for them? It's not that the net is by the side. It's like, where is it? They want to see that you are holding the net. They want to know that you have their back. And they want to know that you can solve problems, and they want to know that you believe in them. So one, I do research so I know what talents these people have, what they're very good at when they're on television or on radio. Usually I talk with other people who have worked with them. What do I need to know? And then, look, I'm still starstruck. I'm still starstruck by the talents I work with. I mean, I really love these people. And so I always remember the thrill of being with them each time. All right, so here's the night before the Mel Brooks interview, Mike Wallace calls me and says, I'm not sure about what we're doing. I said, Mike, we've gone over the interview. We've gone over the questions that I think you want to ask. I think we've focused the piece because I'm not sure. I'm just not sure. And I realized that Mike is a little nervous about meeting Mel Brooks. Mike says, what is this piece about? And I said to him, Mike, this piece is about two old Jews talking. And he said, see you tomorrow. And I said, see you tomorrow.
Perfect.
That's absolutely true.
I'll tell you a little story about Mel, because Mel's son worked for me. Max worked for me on Daddy Dearest, and Mel's best friend from Show of Shows was Howard Morris.
Yeah.
So as I said before, Howie and I were great friends, and you know how they met. I wrote about it. Billy and I wrote about it in the book. But Sid Caesar brought in a writer from France, and he introduced the writer from France as Monsieur Brie. So Monsieur Brie spoke French entirely for the first week, and then they walked into the bathroom one day, and Monsieur Brie was taking a pee, and Howie was idled up next to him, and he was in the other urinal, and he looked at Howie, and he said, "How they hanging, Howie?" And it was Mel Brooks, and they were best friends ever since.
Oh my gosh! Well, I went to the opening night with Mike of the producers, and of course it was a huge hit, and everybody knew it. It was at some swanky restaurant, and who's his wife? I forget already.
And Bankrupt.
Thank you. And so Ann walks over to me, and I introduce myself, and Ann says, Mel's never going to say this to you, but he liked the piece, and it was a good piece. And I was like, God, I love her so much. So, hold on, Billy, I have to tell you a story, though, but I don't know if you can bear hearing a nice story about Frank. But
oh my God!
When we visited, where were we? At Steiner Studios?
No, we're at
not Steiner. So we went to the studio. All right. So we went to the set where Murphy.
Derek, you can get ready the picture of. Oh shit! Like now I can't find it. My battery's running out. But picture 6 on the set of Murphy Brown.
So we're on the set of Murphy Brown, which is television. There's 5 or 6 scenes all together on this huge soundstage with a lot of people and a lot of cameras. And Frank walked over. It was the most gracious act, and basically asked, what did I need to accomplish? Because we needed to put up some lights, we needed to put our cameras in position, but we needed to do this around the tapings so we would not upset the tapings. And we had the original cast. We had Candace, who was the writer-director?
Diane English.
We had to get B-roll, and I explained all this to him, and he went, I will make this work for you. Now, there's press people there to handle it, but they can't move all this stuff. They don't really know the timing. He knows everything that has to happen and is about to happen. And
hear that, Derek?
The only reason we got through that day is because Frank was in my ear and said, you're going to go here. You have 20 minutes to set up. You'll do the interview, break down, disappear. Then you'll come back in 20 minutes. We're going to bring you over there. He choreographed the entire day so we could get through that taping.
Hear that, Derek?
I hear it.
It really was one of the most gracious acts, because sometimes we get to a location and the people are like, wait till they're finished. Well, you had us get here 3 hours early. Just wait. But he made sure we could get what we wanted. So I am eternally grateful, for that moment. He's done other things for me, but I'm eternally grateful for.
Too many guys cannot work him. I can say that about him. He never stops working. He just plugs and plugs and plugs, and he's never happy until it's.
No,
he's done
Billy,
so much TV.
Billy and Jay, you really use the word gracious.
But he was.
You hear that, Derek?
Yes, I do. I'm so shocked.
he took pity on me, and he realized what I had to get through, and he knew that based on this situation, I wouldn't get through it unless he made it happen. And he did make it happen.
Well, enough about me. Derek, can you get ready? The photo, and again, my battery went out, so I have.
Uh-oh. Okay.
By the way, you should know that it hasn't happened often, but when I was at CBS the first time around, I had a reputation. I haven't thought of this in years. I had a reputation with camera crews because I would say to them, bring extra batteries. And like, why? It's like, because I drain batteries.
Oh,
right? And it happened over and over again. There are two things that always happen on my tapings. One, batteries go out, and two, the guy with the leaf blower shows up. Always. I still carry $20. And if the guy with the leaf blower shows up, I say, please, give me an hour. Like, just go away for an hour.
Yeah, every producer worth his brain and salt has got a pocket full of 20s.
Duke 'em. I got to ask you two questions real quick.
Yeah.
Have you ever had anybody else put you through that besides Mel Brooks, that you had to pass a test almost before you could interview him?
No, I know that there are certain people who did research on me, who looked me up, because when I was with them, they said, "Oh, you were at NPR. Oh, you did that," which
Right.
always surprises me that they would do that. Or I've seen that piece. I had the opposite. Leslie Stahl and I did the profile of Kevin Spacey before he won his first Academy Award.
The
I think
original Mick.
for American Beauty, and I had done a lot of research, and I said, "Can I have lunch with you? I just don't. A lot of this doesn't make sense." So I sat with him at a restaurant in Midtown and went over the facts of his life, and I said, "These dates are different, or this story you tell this way here, and this story you tell this way here. What's going on?" He goes, "I don't know. I told the story that way. It was fine, and then it got repeated by the press and repeated by the press. But actually, it's true this way. I just never corrected it. I didn't want Leslie Stahl sitting there with obvious discrepancies in his timeline and in his story, and so I had to do a test with him just so we knew names, dates, what happened when."
What? I got to ask you, you went to the University of Maryland, you graduated with your journalism degree, and that's like
Correct.
one of the best journalism programs in the country, bar none.
Yes, I've been for like 15 years. I'm on the board of visitors of the journalism school. So every semester I go to a couple of meetings, and I'm always talking with students. And next week I'll be talking with students who may want to go there, and I'll try to convince them to go there. It was a great school.
My journalism degree is from the University of Florida. I got it when I was 62 years old.
I know you did.
But even though, I was at Florida, they always talk about the University of Maryland's journalism program with reference.
Yeah, and in fact, now, Syracuse sort of has the brand, but there's a great sports journalism program at Maryland. They had one of the great sports writers in the country was Shirley Povich, and Shirley is Maury's father. And Maury and Connie Chung gave a hunk of money, and the archives, Shirley's archives, are at Maryland, and it's one of the great places to study sports journalism. And now, of course, Maryland is a Big Ten school, so there's access to that.
I don't want to interrupt.
I was very lucky to go there.
I don't want to interrupt you, Jay, but you worked with Connie Chung.
Yes,
I absolutely adore Connie Chung.
I love Connie Chung
on journalism, and a terrific reporter, and even a better person.
She's great, and there are stories about her that are absolutely true. My first taping with her, she said, "Don't you think the crew needs coffee?" I said, "Yeah, I'll get coffee." She goes, "No, I'm going to get coffee." It's like, no, this is like millions of dollars worth of anchor walking to the street. I'll say, "I'll go with you." I mean, she was going to go downstairs and in the street and get coffee. There are stories that when she was in a studio situation, a director said to her, Connie, go to camera 2. Well, she didn't know the numbers of the cameras. She knew the guys' names, right? And she always knew their names. Yeah, I mean, working with Connie was just the best experience. And she had a show on CBS, a primetime show called Eye to Eye with Connie Chung. And I produced a number of her pieces and would watch the Connie Chung effect. Remember, when Connie was at her best, she was one of those popular people in the country. Her ratings, what they call the Q ratings, popularity ratings, were higher than animated characters. I mean, people loved her more than cartoons. And I would bring her into a situation and, there'd be a newsmaker or a guest, and you could see it on their faces. Oh my God, I am sitting with Connie Chung. And they would tell her everything. Like I can't hide from Connie. Can't.
And I met her, it was probably the late 70s. She was doing CBS News, KCBS News.
Yeah.
Los Angeles. And I knew her when I knew Tom Brokaw, because there were local anchors out here before they went to New York and hit it big time. And boy, did they hit it big time.
Well, I had known her. She was at Maryland a few years before me, but she would attend alumni events. So I knew her through Maryland, but I remember being at CBS and flying into LA, late 80s maybe, and I could see from the plane a billboard on the highway, and all it said was Connie. Mm-hmm. And the time she was on the air, and I thought, she's doing really well.
I know another person we both had the pleasure of working with was John Philo. Derek, if you got photo number 11, can you tell us a little bit about John?
Yeah, John just retired, but he was head of photography for CBS, all of CBS, which meant that if you saw a cast picture or you saw a photo shoot, it was John. Now, here's the story. John is at Kent State, and he understands that there's going to be a student protest, and he has a little film left in his camera, and he goes out and he takes that now iconic picture, right? He's out there, he takes a picture. I mean, I've seen, because I've done a piece with John about that picture. There are other pictures in that sequence, not many, but there's a side shot. You can't see it, but there's a pool of blood from that student, and it's really horrifying. Well, that picture, of course, won the Pulitzer Prize. John Philo was a college student when he won a Pulitzer Prize for that photograph. I mean, he had a great career and a wonderful career at CBS for many, many years. I'll tell you a story that I know. If you look carefully at the young woman who's leaning, you will see.
She was a 14-year-old Florida runaway, wasn't she?
Right. You will see that in the distance is a post coming. It looks like it's coming out of her head.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? So John, every now and then, sees that photo editors have taken that pole out, right? And then he will contact those people and say, that's not my photograph. So people who have famous photographs, I know this from working with many photographers, you have to police the photograph because that is his take on the photograph, and people crop it differently, but that's not his photograph. People will colorize it in ways, sepia or whatever. That's not his photograph. So he's just a great guy. He's a great photographer.
Yeah, he was our photographer on Murphy Brown. He was a photographer on Murphy Brown, and he took some great photographs, and I got to speak to him and talk to him quite a bit.
You did a piece on Liz Smith, and you talked about a lunch that you had with Ann Richards, who's a hero of mine, and Liz Smith.
My God.
And you said you couldn't really talk too much about the lunch. I'd love to probe your brain about that.
Well, it was
Actually, Liz Smith is a really good friend of Maureen O'Brien, who's a friend of mine. And
yes, yeah. So Mike, during the time I was with him, and I was only with Mike a year. We were friends for 5 years, but during that year, he said, "We're going to do a piece on Liz Smith." So I knew that way back in the early radio days, Liz was his assistant, and they had a great friendship. And she had a new book coming out, a memoir. So I got sent the galleys, and I get to a page, and I went, "Oh." Now remember, in her prime, everyone spoke to Liz. I mean, Liz got the scoops. Liz was it. Very influential and the nicest person. And I called her and I said, "Liz, it seems that in your own memoir on this page, you're outing yourself. You're admitting that you're gay." She goes, "Yeah, what are we going to do about that?" I said, "I'll call you back." And I thought about it, and I said, "Would you go to the University of Texas at Austin?" And she said, "Yes." So I took Mike and her there, and the idea was that we would talk about, here she was on the school paper, and here's where her life as a journalist began, and it's also where she had her first love affair. I knew if we went from a nice interview location, we were actually in a restaurant, to the university, it would just be matter of fact. I didn't want the whole piece to center on the fact that she was gay. I just felt it wasn't right given her career.
All your life.
But it was going to make news. So that worked perfectly. And she and Mike, they loved each other. And it was a wonderful piece, and she thoroughly cooperated. And I wanted a little B-roll, and she said, "Well, Ann's coming into town." And I had the biggest crush on Ann Richards.
Me too.
Oh my God. And I had booked her on CBS This Morning, and she knew me. Not that she knew me, but she remembered a moment at the convention. And the fact is, I don't even remember if we used any of it in the piece. I mean, we had a cameraman, the two of them, and it was just a lunch, but it was so raucous. The stories were so inappropriate that
that's what I want to hear.
You couldn't put any of them on the air. So one more thing. After the piece aired, and the piece must have aired in like 2000, Liz called me and said, "Jay, I love the piece, and we're going to be friends." And it's like, Liz, like, no one friends television producers. Like, you're friends with Barbara Walters and Pete Peterson and all these famous people. She says, no, we're going to be friends. And 2 or 3 times a year until her death, she'd say, "Put on your tux, here's where we're going, pick me up at 7:30. And my wife was enormously understanding. I mean, we had some meals with my wife too, but I had dates with Liz Smith, and we had the best time together. And wherever we left off, we just picked up again. We just picked up.
Well, Ann Richards has been a fan. I've been a fan of Ann Richards ever since she made that famous quip about George W. Bush being born with a silver foot
in his mouth.
Yeah, that line right there. I said, well, that's and then Molly Ivins picked up with the Shrub after that.
Liz, I mean, Ann Richards would have been great to have around for the last couple of years.
Oh.
Her wit and her honesty.
Yeah, she was living with a golf writer, wasn't she? A guy who wrote the Little Red Book. I can't remember his name right offhand, but
the Little Red Book.
Remember.
Yeah.
Eric, look that up because that's a really famous golf book.
I'm not going to remember.
And
I'll tell you something. I'm now having a very wonderful relationship with Angie Dickinson, policewoman.
Oh.
She too said after the piece that I did with Mo Rocca, we're going to be friends. And before the pandemic, my brother and I went to dinner with her. My brother's in the business, and we talk every now and then. We email all the time. I we have. It's just a
That's
thing.
great.
But that never happens. That
That's great. I mean, that's like some of the.
I know.
And it's a tribute to you. You're an affable guy. And people want to get to know you. That's
No,
great.
I know, but
I got a funny story about Angie. Angie was a guest on Daddy Dearest with Don Rickles, and she was, this was 25 years ago. So she was still she was an idol of mine. I mean, every guy in this grew up in the '60s had her Esquire picture on the cover of the magazine, and she was again. Billy uses this term all the time, but she was a great dame.
yeah,
She was and is a great dame.
she
and
is.
She was drinking with me and Don after every show. Don and I would repair to his dressing room, and we would drink a bottle of vodka, and he would eat pigs in a blanket. If his wife wasn't on the show that night, he would eat pigs in a blanket. So one night, it was just Don, me, Angie, and Tony O, our friend who wrote a book about Sinatra. Just the four of us polished off a bottle of vodka, ate a bunch of pigs in a blanket, and that was Angie.
By the way, when I was with her, she lives up in the Beverly Hills and beautiful view, and we were in her back room, and I just tidied up a bit, but she has a bookshelf with everything. Her whole career is on that bookshelf. But there is, in the interview, you see it on the third camera, a full life-size cutout of Frank Sinatra. We didn't bring that. That was there.
Yeah.
That was already there. And during the interview, she said, I've never told this to people, but Frank really wanted me to marry him. But I just didn't want that. I just didn't want that life, But it's look, when the pandemic finishes, when it's over and I can travel again, I want to see my brother in Los Angeles because I love him, and I want to see Angie.
And now you want to see me.
I would love to see you. Are you kidding? Like, everybody.
Before we go, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about your career on NPR Morning Edition. You were the founding producer at 27, and they handed you the show and said, "Can you?" They said, "Just basically do it." You had 10 days to get it ready.
Yeah, we had done. I was at NPR for a couple of years. I was on a weekly arts magazine, but I was interested in formats. I was interested in how things sound on the radio, and this was the first time that NPR was getting into the satellite business. There weren't satellites at that point to carry audio, and we realized that we could. Our afternoon show, All Things Considered, which started 50 years ago, this May, that was a program, but this would be a service that the stations could actually co-produce the program with us. So I was the one who drew the clock, meaning if we started the newscast here, where will we end it? Where can stations join us? Where can stations leave us? And they had hired two very successful commercial radio producers who did pilots in the summer of 1979, and it didn't sound like public radio. And by the way, our president at the time was Frank Mankiewicz.
Yeah.
Wow.
Frank, right? So Herman's son, Joe's nephew, and the person you saw announce Robert F. Kennedy's death, he was Robert F. Kennedy's spokesman, but he was president of NPR, and he knew that the show wasn't like NPR. And 10 days before air, beginning of November 1979, he basically let the two hosts go. Now, by the way, one of those hosts was Pete Williams, who you see on NBC. He was from the public radio station in Casper, Wyoming. All he ever wanted to do was work at NPR. He's done very well. So 10 days before we were supposed to air, the stations heard the pilots and said, God, this doesn't sound like public radio. But we had a bunch of stations that wanted to go with us, and there was a meeting at the news vice president's house, and Mankiewicz looked at me and said, well, you basically drew the format, get the show on the air. So I had 10 days to get that show on the air, but I knew a lot about public radio at the time. I had a great staff. I produced the show for 5 years. Then there was enough money for a weekend show, so Scott Simon and I sat down and in 1985 created Weekend Edition, Saturday, and then a year later there was money for Sunday, and I sat with Susan Stamberg, who was there on the first day of NPR in 1971, and we created Weekend Edition Sunday. So I'm actually somewhat responsible for all of NPR's morning programming. So I worked there for 14 years, worked at CBS for 14 years. Then I came back to NPR and I was senior vice president for programming for 7 or 8 years. I know you might find that hard to believe that I was actually an executive, but I was for 7 or 8 years and enjoyed it. I mean, I love NPR, but as you can see, there's the CBS.
Yes.
This is really the most wonderful job I've ever had. So
That's fantastic.
You always also work with Red Barber, the old redhead at NPR Morning Edition.
I'll tell you one quick story. Every week on Fridays, Bob Edwards, the host of Morning Edition, spoke to Red Barber from Tallahassee, and Bob was on live with who broke the sound barrier? He just died. Chuck Yeager.
Yeah.
He was on with Chuck Yeager, and NASA was in a hold, and Bob was talking with him, and then it came time on the clock for Red Barber, and I had Red on the phone. I said, Red, would you go on the phone with Chuck Yeager? Yeah. So I said, Bob, in his ear, let's go. And Chuck was in Florida, and he introduced him to Red, and Red said to him something like, by any chance, are you related to a baseball player? I want to say like Steve Yeager or something. So it ends up that Red knew so much about how to be on the radio that in the middle of a NASA space launch, he was able to be Red Barber and be so wonderful. And it's considered a classic moment with Bob Edwards talking with Chuck Yeager, talking with Red Barber. It's a great memory. All I did was say, okay, let's put them on the air. That's what a producer does. Let's put them together.
And for people who don't know, Red Barber was Vin Scully's mentor with the Brooklyn Dodgers and a longtime Yankee broadcaster.
And we had Red Barber Day at NPR once. He came up to Washington, D.C. We were all in Red Barber Day T-shirts, and you had to weep openly seeing him because he was such a great broadcaster.
He was the true definition of an icon.
This is the old redhead, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I've been very lucky. I really have been very lucky.
Yeah. I mean, I consider myself lucky to be doing this podcast and meeting guys like you. I mean, but you've met some real heavyweights and interviewed them. Yeah, I want to ask you a question from me, and this ain't for the audience. And I don't care if they like it or not, but I want to ask you a question from me.
All right.
You put together a 6-minute segment, 6.5-minute segment.
Okay.
There's an old journalism principle that I studied and learned that when you're writing, you open up with action, then you give background, then you give development, then you give a climax, then you give an ending. The ABDCE rule, they call it, right? Do you open on your 6.5-minute piece? Do you look for something you start in the middle of your story is what I'm asking, basically.
Yeah. It's a good question. You know that the audience is watching television or watching a screen, and they're not really concentrating. There's someone else in the room talking with them. They're looking at the screen, but they're also saying, oh, there's that laundry. Radio goes directly into your head. Television is across the room. Radio people can be intimate. They're coming right into your ear. Television people have to be a little louder to get your attention. And we know that people in the first 30 seconds of a piece will decide, do I want to see this piece or do I want to go to the bathroom?
Lead. You got to have that lead.
Do I want to see this piece? Do I want to go to the kitchen? Now, of course, Jane and her writers they're doing everything that they can to get you interested in it. The best pieces begin with something unexpected. they begin with something that makes you think, oh, I got to stay tuned. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh my God, look where they're taking me. Oh, look at that person. I have to know more. And your pieces can fail in the first 20 or 30 seconds if you do not grab the audience. But you also have to grab the audience in a way that is honest to the story you're telling. So, but by the way, a couple of weeks ago, I did a piece. There's a new book by an author named David Michaelis, bestseller book on Eleanor Roosevelt. He spent 10 years putting this book together. And we visited, we took him up to the Roosevelt home, upstate New York, and beautiful place outside to do the interview. But, you know, do people really care about Eleanor Roosevelt? Well, I was on the internet machine and I found a moment of a Frank Sinatra special where he gets Eleanor Roosevelt to sing High Hopes. She sort of,
Oh, wow.
She sort of says it and sings it. And I wrote a line with Mo that said, on this show, the chairman of the board is with the first lady of the United States. It's some clever line, moderately clever. But I had never seen that footage before. And I thought, in this first 20 seconds, to see Eleanor Roosevelt with Frank Sinatra,
Grab.
boom.
Gold.
Right? Gold. I had no idea, reading the book, that the piece was going to begin that way. But once I saw that tape, I said, no one is going to turn away from this piece with that piece of tape.
Great. That's terrific. Hey, Jay, Derek, can you get ready photo 10, but don't put it up yet. Billy and I wrote a book. It was coming out, another book. It's coming out in, I think, the summer.
Excuse me a second. I know you both have written books. Had I been my normal producer self, I would have read those books before I appeared on your podcast. Please forgive me. Like, I feel guilty and I feel like I haven't done my job.
Oh,
I've just been so busy.
You're our guest.
Why did you grace us with your presence, man? Come on. Are you kidding me? I'm delighted you're here.
I know, but in terms of preparation, I normally would have read these books. So
yes. Okay, that's fine. But in one of the books we said, talking about the 60s, LBJ said, when I lost Walter Cronkite, I lost America. What was it like working with Walter Cronkite? Now you can put up number 10, Derek.
Well,
Wow.
I don't want to give you... Now, by the way, today is the day that he left the anchor chair.
Wow.
The day we're taping this is his 19th year. I have to admit something to you, and this is the power of the internet machine. I did a little work with Dan Rather, a very little work. I did 4 years with Leslie Stahl. I did a year with Mike Wallace. I never worked with Walter Cronkite.
But you met him, you knew him.
We had a totally social relationship in that I would cover the Kennedy Center Honors every year. He was at the Kennedy Center Honors. We always spoke. After CBS, he had a number of projects. One of them was to be a special correspondent for NPR. And he would give his historical perspective on something an event or something that happened in the news. He would record them at NPR in New York, where I had an office. So when he came in, I would throw myself at him, thank him for being there, and always engage him in conversation. But he made himself available to all the journalists there. He knew that he needed extra time.
I'm going to tell you something. I would rather have a casual relation with somebody than a working relationship, because a casual relationship you have to want to have that relationship. A working relationship, you're just thrown together.
So that picture makes it look like we're buddies, but I mean, Mike Wallace and I, we had the best time together. For the year I was with him, I feel like we were on the same page. We were very close. Walter, I was just a fanboy, you know.
Yeah, but the picture is terrific. I mean, You think about Morrow, Cronkite, Mike Wallace. What do you think about television news today, where like they don't just read you the news, they got to come out with 3 talking heads to tell you what you just heard, depending on whether you're watching the affirmation journalism is what I'm talking about.
Look, I'm old school. I think that journalism, broadcast journalism, should be facts. It should be context. It should be. It should be. If
as
it has
unbiased as possible.
If it has opinion, the opinion should be clearly identified. Now, the fact is, there is room for other kinds of journalism. I mean, when you look at what MSNBC has done the past 4 years, incredible reporting. Someone like Rachel Maddow, some of the people in their prime time, they were able to connect the dots in ways that few journalists could. I just think the audience either doesn't know or doesn't care. I think things should be labeled. When things are opinion, it should say, this is opinion.
Like in a newspaper, op-ed section.
Right, but otherwise news should be news. But look, you also have newscasts that are back-to-back with Entertainment Tonight or Inside Edition. And, it's all the same thing for most people. It's information, it's stories. We're just at a time when the truth has taken a beating. When people lied to us every day. And for those of us in the business, it was very, very disturbing. So I think there needs to be a course correction, and it's a little course correction. Tell people what is opinion, tell people what is reporting. That's my opinion.
The reason Cronkite was the most trusted man in America was because he was the only source of information. He was the man who told us JFK had been assassinated, and the same man was the person we learned that man had landed on the moon from.
Look, there were other great people, Huntley and Brinkley. There were great people on television, but Harry Reasoner, he was able to look at you in the camera, and you believed him.
He was Uncle Walter.
Yeah, and
that's in America. He was called.
That's it just didn't happen. It happened because he had been a radio reporter. He had been on the scene. He understood what Ed Murrow had done. He understood what it was to have the trust of the American people. And for his career, he did not break that trust. That's a big deal.
You think the fairness doctrine was the start of all of it? Like the start of
some people
of inaccuracy starting to seep into journalism. Of course, the internet has made it like nobody knows what's true anymore. You got to Google everything.
Look, it's hard to say where it began. If you look at the history of newspapers, there was always yellow journalism.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, there were always, people forget, there were always newspapers that were salacious, that were filled with fiction. So it's hard to say where it began. It's really up to the public to demand fairness, to demand the truth.
I got to tell you a quick anecdote, real quick. A friend of mine worked for when he got out of school, young kid, he went to work for the National Enquirer, right? Mm-hmm. He said the difference in working for the Enquirer and working for a regular newspaper is that when somebody calls you up in a regular newspaper and you say, listen, I have a talking dog, you're going to hang up on them. He said, if you work at the Enquirer and they call me up and say, I got a talking dog, I say, put the dog on the phone.
I mean, one of my mentors, and I've been very lucky, said to me once, if the story sounds too good to be true, you may want to back away from it. Like if it's such a great story, make sure that it is what it's purported to be. Because of the internet and social media actually, they're very good for journalism because there's all kinds of information that you would never find out if you didn't see it on social media. But you used to do a piece and maybe you'd get a phone call, but you'd have to wait for the mail to come in. Now, people are evaluating your piece while it's on the air.
Real time.
While it's running, the audience is judging what you have done. And that means you really have to be at the top of your game.
Well,
You mentioned about the 28 seconds with the nature thing. People are actually calling you up and saying it's 28 seconds, not 30. That's incredible to me.
I did a piece on Ricky Martin, and we were taping him in Vegas. And like so many people, 10 or 15 people looked at the tape. We all looked at the tape before it got on air. Somebody out there froze like a couple of frames. And one of his dancers at a rehearsal was wearing a T-shirt with the F word on it. We didn't see it. It went by like that. Well, of course, we had to take the piece off of our website, we just got rid of that shot. But
yeah, they're doing it a lot. You have people that are just looking for little obvious things that are what's the right word?
Blatant mistakes.
Things like that.
Gotcha. They're looking for anything, but
Gotchas. Yeah.
But as I said, it makes you want to get everything right, but you have to get everything right.
Yeah. Well, one thing we got right was this interview.
Oh man, you were.
You're very kind.
We're all talking to you, pal.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Before we go, Billy, you want to ask him any questions? One last question, Billy. One last question, Derek.
Let's see. I got that thing about the fairness doctrine. Yeah, I kind of agree with you. They should label it that this is an op-ed piece. You know what? I think the internet, like you said, maybe it holds you to a higher standard. But of course, everybody now is a Facebook scientist. Everybody's a Facebook journalist. You know.
And look, there's some of us, Frank. You understand this. We feel like we're the last generation to be in television. Like, are people, will people be watching television in 5 or 10 years? Well, we hope so, but
we're not watching television now, according to the Golden Globe.
Right, young people aren't.
Frank,
So,
how many people watched that Head of the Class Goes to Moscow? What was the numbers?
27 million.
Wow.
27 million. Imagine.
well, look, Cronkite had 22 or 25 million people every night.
Yep. And that,
Unheard of.
And that was in the era when television was king, and MASH drew 80 million people for their finale.
Wow.
Those are incredible numbers. No one will.
By the way, I have to put the words on the screen that I do not represent CBS News or CBS or Viacom. I'm really only speaking for myself. So in no way do I represent the company. I mean, I try to represent the company well, but in what I've told you, that's just me. It is not Viacom, CBS, not CBS News. So,
Derek, fire away.
Yeah, I got a couple questions. So what do you think that there is a article where you wrote, where you didn't write, but somebody else wrote, passing the Why Should I Care test? And what do you think the American public should care about that is not being talked about in mainstream media currently?
I thank you for that question. It is too easy for us to walk by homeless people every day. It is too easy for us to feel that people who are in need are over there, are someone else. We pay attention to success stories, to people who have wealth, and there are people who are families, single mothers. There are people who are really suffering in this country, and this country has the wealth to take care of people, and that needs to be figured out. Now, do people want to watch that on television? I don't think people want to watch a lot of it, but it's important to keep reporting on it, because this pandemic has put a lot of people out of work, and there are a lot of people in need. And those of us who have been fortunate to have something and do well, we have to make sure attention is paid.
And Jay, as you say, people may not want to watch it on television, but they don't want to drive by it on the streets either. So which do you want to do less of? and we can fix both of those problems.
We should be able to figure that out.
And then,
Richest country in the world, we should be able to figure that out.
Jay, do you sing? You have a singing voice?
I in
I feel
the
like you
shower,
do.
when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I had a voice, and in summer camp I would sing. Thank you for even thinking. I don't really sing that well, but I was on radio for years, and so I had to. By the way, my brother sort of talks like this, and I grew up talking like this. Guy from northern New Jersey. And when I got at my public radio station when I was 17 years old, they said to me, "You can't talk that way and be in radio." So this was a classical music station, and they spoke this way, and I just was a good mimic, and so this became my speaking voice. But I was in radio for so long, and thought I needed to speak well, and so
You lost your Jersey accent.
I try, yeah. My town is Bergenfield, New Jersey. Bob Gaudio of the Four Seasons came from there.
Oh, yeah.
And Bob Guccione came from there.
Uh-huh.
And the publisher of Penthouse magazine, I met him once. We had the same teachers. We went to the same bowling alley. We went to the same pizza parlor. We just dated different kind of women. It's true. It's true.
We'll let you go, Jay, with that. But that's a great ending to a great interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Well,
pleasure.
you guys are very kind. I am going to read your books. Derek, thank you so much for making me sound good.
Oh, you were great. You're
Real
fantastic.
pleasure.
Thank you so
Real
much.
pleasure.
All right.
Thank you so much, Jay.
Take care. Be well.
Be
How
well.
That was fantastic, guys. What do you think?
So Bob Guccione, was he an idol of yours, Frank, way back when? Penthouse was a big deal, I remember when people were yanking their crank to National Geographic when we were kids. Look, tits in Indonesia. How about this? Holy Christ. Look, tits in Indonesia. Holy mackerel. Look at this. Woo!
It's funny you said that. We used to have a dump back where I grew up in North White Plains, New York. Now there's Gambino's got a gas station there, of course. Gambino. But in the dump, we used to go scrounging through the dump to find old National Geographic magazines so we can see Africans.
That's
But I bet
hilarious.
you the
Oh my
generation
God.
before us, I swear to God, I bet you the generation before us was yanking their cranks to Sears catalog and the underwear section.
This explains everything.
I
This
swear to God.
explains. This explains so much.
We used to have to walk past the dump on our way to the school. So those were the days where you walk, a half a mile to go to school or a quarter of a mile to go to school, but we always passed the dump. So whenever we wanted to, get a thrill, we went to find the National Geographic.
People thought we were buying National Geographic because we were interested in geography.
Yeah.
I
That-
definitely.
You know what's cool? I got to tell you the 6 degrees of separation again. He talked about Mel Brooks and Anne Bancroft. Well, Anne Bancroft is Blinky's cousin. I swear to God, Anne Bancroft was Blinky's first cousin. And I never knew this. He's my best friend, right? So when his father died, now you got to realize Blinky's 72, which means his father, if he was alive today,
His father.
he'd be about 105, 106, right? So, I mean, he's really generations removed, and racist and prejudiced. I mean, he's an old giddy from the Bronx who's he'd be alive today, be 105 years old. So anyway, he dies. So naturally, he's my best friend. I go to the wake. And after the wake, they have a little buffet, like back at an Italian restaurant.
Buffet.
I'm online getting some pasta. And I look next to me, it's Anne Bancroft. Right? I'm freaked. I said, holy shit. I said, that's what? Huh? And I go over to Blinky. I says, is that Anne Bancroft? He goes, yeah, that's my cousin Annie.
Wow.
I says, you prick, I've known you for 20 years. You never told me Anne Bancroft was your cousin. He goes, why should I tell you? It's not doing me any good. I says, well, is Mel Brooks here? He goes, nah, Mel Brooks wouldn't come. He goes, my father never talked to her after she married Mel Brooks. And I says, why would she not talk to him? It's Mel Brooks. He goes, because she married a Jew.
Oh my God.
Never talked to her again. He wouldn't talk to her because she married a Jew. I said, that's not a Jew. It's Mel Brooks. He goes,
That's funny.
Yeah.
I in the first draft of Lips, I wrote a story about Anne, and Billy edited it out, and we rewrote we rewrote something better. But I told a story that at Howie Morris, and again, this is the third reference to Howie, but at Howie Morris's fourth wedding, he remarried his second wife, and he said, "I'm going to announce it in the recycler." So we went to the reception, and Mel was there, and Anne Bancroft was there, and that was the time that Max Brooks, who's a noted author now, was working for me. So Annie comes over and she says, "Are you Max's boss?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm Max's boss, and I'm pleasure to meet you, Anne. And you should be very proud of Max." And she said, "Oh, I'm so proud of Max. I adore him. You know, Mel was married before, and he's got 2 other kids. But if anything ever, so if anything ever happened to Max, he would get over it. But I would be shocked, and I would be heartbroken." And I'm thinking of, Jesus Christ, that's sort of morbid to say that.
Italian mother, man. You're talking Italian mother here. You know the deal.
That's exactly right. That's
you know the deal. I mean, and you know what? Jay had mentioned how gracious she was to him.
Yep. Hey, Derek.
Yeah.
Do you have a Florida man for us this week?
I do.
You have one ready to go?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, why not?
Florida
Let's check
man.
this out.
Florida.
Man in dog costume killed himself having sex with Siberian Husky. Unbelievable.
Perfect.
Florida man. I hope the Siberian Husky he picked was the best looking one. We can only hope.
My God. Well, you want to wrap it up for this week? You got anything else you want to talk about next week?
How long did we run, Derek? We ran.
We ran as long.
We're about as.
We ran as long as we ran. Next week we're going to run over. Next week we're going to have our salute to St. Patrick's Day, but we're going to have Billy's old friend Matty Kilcullen,
And your old friend.
and I've known Matty for 25, 30 years. The man that introduced me to Billy.
Jesus. And you haven't had him shot yet or arrested or anything like that?
I'm going to tell you, it's so appropriate that he's the athletic director at Mercy College, because I met Billy on a Mercy meeting.
That's true.
From that,
I was stupid enough to think you were my big break.
It all comes out.
Downhill ever since.
it all comes out. Remember, these lips could talk.
Yes. And
Questions of a Bronx bookie. They're
subscribe to a Mick, a Mook, and a Mike. And keep your eyes out for a Lamar's Gamble. It's coming out soon.
So with that, let's sign off.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching as always.
Adios.